Good morning, students. We will be starting with the next unit, that is standardization and materials management. I, Dr. Rohan Prabhakar Devale, welcome you all. We'll start with introduction. There is practically no economic activity nowadays which is not outlined, whether partly or maybe totally or fully, by the process of standardization. The standardization process is extremely important for today's organizations. Economic globalization and the alteration of the regulatory process at the national, regional, and as well as global levels are intimately tied to the acceptance of standardization on a global scale. If left unchecked, problems have tendency to diversify and become convoluted and become like chariot like this. Standardization process aids in reduction, simplification, and organization of such situations. It entails the creation, release, and application of standards. Standardization also adds benefit on several levels. Standards are produced as a result of the standardized process. We can say easily like fundamental corporate functions that increases the value of a final product is materials management system. This system encompasses all the functions linked to the materials. It may also involve buying tools and other equipment requirements for production procedures along with any replacement components, inventory analysis, inventory control managers, materials managers, material planners, as well as the hybrid role of buyer, planner, and some typical positions in the field of materials management. Whatever the position, the primary goal of materials management is to guarantee a supply of materials with optimized inventory level and minimal gap expected between the expected and actual outcomes. In this particular unit, standardization meaning various techniques of standardization at its different types, importance of metals management, that all are described. What is standardization? We start with definition, some relevance, and the Indian standards and its specifications. Standardization have may have different meanings according to its context. It is considered as universally agreed upon a set of various guidelines for interoperability. Standards make it possible to minimize the variations in the same task performed by the different people to acquire the best way to perform the task and document it in detail. Production process or service process and the activities become routine with all these defined boundaries. How we are going to define a standard? Standard can be defined as a model or some general agreement of rules established by the authorities or custom created and used by various levels of interest. Nowadays, many organizations with global operations are keen to go for standardization of their processes and operations. It has various advantages, which primarily stem from its ability to provide a basis of the similarity and consistency in operations, procedures, and processes. Consistency enhances the efficiency, so it also makes process control easier and create a favorable perception of service or poor quality. So there are different type of standards. Standards can be based on product description, methods of test, codes of practice, etc. However, the best way to classify standard based on most significant difference is the different tasks or different types of standard, that is publicly available standards. They are, for instance, a standard defined by a trade association which may be used by any organization. Next is private standard. So they are public, but they are based on a specific requirement of the organization that developed them. So we were talking about publicly available standards. So what are these? So when one talks about the publicly available standards, the most important category is international standards. So these standards generally deal with establishing agreements on uniform identification or identifications for the defined characteristics of quality, then layout, performance, service, quantity, and so on. So the primary authority that produces such a standard is the ISO, that is International Standard Organization. The ISO has its member, the national standard bodies, uh, comprising the countries across the globe. So the standards that are developed are applied to the products, processes, and services. A well-known process standard is ISO 9000 series. So it provides a structure for the effective management of the organization. So there are some considered of legal documents in India that are related to wide range of subjects, including the product specification, then method of test, codes of practices, various guidelines, then some basic standards, etc. Apart from that, there are some private standards. So private standards helps organization to reduce uncertainty and variability in their processes. By using standardization process, organization create for themselves many options to improve the competitiveness. Some of the types of private standard that are found in most of the manufacturing organization are like raw material standards or some process standards. So raw materials standardization is like most of the raw materials use bar stock or steel and other steel tubes, steel metals, some casting, hardware, and even programmable chips, etc. Process standardization, so producing consistent goods and services, is important for uh, businesses in today's competitive environment. So consistent quality signifies repeated sales. So that is possible through the process standardization. So private standards can be further classified as process standard. Next we are talking about its process standardization. So there can be product or component standardization, total standardization, and feature standardization. So first we'll talk about the product or component standardization. So a large number of buying firms prepare their own specifications suited to their specific products. By preparing such own specifications, they do not have to pay premium prices of the brand name items. They can often create the specification that avoid the use of patented copyrights and proprietary products. By so doing, they have broadened the field of competition as it allows all manufacturers capable of meeting the firm's specification as potential suppliers. Then we will be talking about some total standardization. So tooling cost for most mechanical industries can be extremely large. Standardization ascertains how many different tools are needed for assembly, alignment, calibration, testing, repair, and service. Most such organizations have company wide tool standardization programs. These programs work with people in manufacturing services to ascertain tools preferences, analyze tools used for existing products, prioritize usage histories to determine the standard toolings. And last is feature standardization. Features are any geometry that needs a, a specific tool like a drill, rim, then grind, lap, etc. Like cutting tools, bit for the machine tools. Such tools as well as the processes need to be standardized. Hard questions need to be asked before finalizing standardization. For example, how do you need to lap the part? Can grinding provides the end results required? So standardization is carried out using same procedures as tool standardization. So, what are the various benefits of the standardization? So, before that, we'll just learn about developing a standardization program. So, a standardization program can be approached in various ways, but uh, uh, because so many departments and suppliers are affected by the standard decisions, the benefits of standardization cannot be fully realized without involving cross-functional teams with internal members from different departments. Example, supply management, marketing, quality, engineering. In addition, internal members, the exercise becomes more beneficial if relevant supplies also included in the team. So there are some advantages of the standardization. So there are many benefits of standardization. All the advantages accrue from the fact that standardization enables the organization to minimize uncertainty and variability. It provides for the consistency, and consistency increases efficiency. So it also enables easier process control. So there are, I'll just list out various advantages. First is it reduces the inventory items. It lowers the product cost. It lowers the purchasing cost. It lowers the overhead cost. It lowers the inventory cost. Standardization also helps in providing quicker product layout. It enhances the product flexibility capabilities, and it also helps in enhancing quality, delivery of the materials, responsiveness of the overall system, and it simplified the value comparisons. So standardization does not only provides advantages to the business, it also it's so powerful concept. It finds use in all walks of life. So standardization provides a structure for effective management of the organization, whatever be the function it may carry out. So after standardization, we'll just talk about company standardization. So company standardization is the process of developing norms to govern the manufacture of a goods or service based on agreement of all relevant industry stakeholders. The standards guarantee that goods or services produced in a particular industry have consistent quality and are comparable to other related products or services in the same sector. Now, standardization also contributes to the safety and the compatibility of the manufacturing items. So, users, interest groups, government companies, and standard bodies are among the stakeholders participating in the standardization process. The capability of standardization or standardizing the knowledge work has important consequences for a strategy in almost every part of the company. It provides some possibilities and chances for exceptional performances and competitive advantage. Although there are far many consequences to state in their full, the following list will spark thought and begin the different job transferring the manufacturing perspectives. So, standardization may be applied to almost anything that includes some rules, laws, technologies in the organization, products, services, behaviors, and measurements. Yes, so this I was talking about. So, despite of all that promises, finding a clear and some concept of standardization in business, let it alone actual standard and arise from it can be tough. So any method used to define and apply metrics, that is standards, that identify the basic quantities, anything whose control and uniformity are desired to referred as the standardization. So standardization can be applied to almost anything like rules, technologies, products, services, behaviors, and measurement. What is significance of the company standardization? So in the corporate world, standardization is the crucial since it promotes the product safety. Additionally, it promotes the product compatibility and consistency of quality. As a result, a set of procedures within the industry become standard. To make their financial information more understandable for the general public, firms, for instance, adhere standardize while creating their yearly financial statements. The purpose of standardization is to establish consistency in specific industrial processes. Standardization focus on product development process, corporate operations, technology in use, and how specified mandatory processes are implemented to carry out. The following or the listed are some of the advantages of the standardization in business. So it intensify the output, removing uncertainty and guessing from the processes, enhancing the standard of client services, then lowering the operating expenses and making better use of various resources. Now we will talk about types of standardization process. So some standardization procedures are initiated and handled formally. So other emerges is like uncontrollably. So there are two types. First is uh, deliberate the standardization process. So deliberate standardization methods are designed, implemented, and enforced deliberately and purposefully. They are frequently maintained centrally. They often include documentation, formal reviews, and analysis, all with the goal of producing a set of public standards. Fact, most of the people concerned with the term standardization with the purposeful standardization procedures. Deliberate standardization methods are being scrutinized, analyzed, and evaluated more closely. As a result, these standards that are emerged from these procedures are usually well tested and clearly documented. It's the simple to find their documented output such as specifications, regulations, list of ingredients, building regulations, and regulation for safety. Then next is uh, de facto standardization process. De facto standardization processes or procedures, on the other hand, frequently originate spontaneously and operate in a decentralized manner. Despite widespread participation and acceptance, they are seldom managed. They are usually informed and context or interpretation dependent. As a result, de facto standardization procedures might be hidden in a plain slightly easier, missed, and taken for granted. So, de facto standardization techniques include various things like everyday guidelines, then know how, then tribal wisdom, then data contained in a business letter or email or invoice, or maybe a language variety trends such as uh, slang, then text or pictures for mobile phones, etc. We'll talk more about company standardization. There can be brand name or there can be product standards. So, company standardization is used in the business sector to establish a constant degree of quality, then production standards, manufacturing outputs, and brand awareness. Many fast food franchises, for example, have specific processes recorded to ensure that a burger is made in the same way regardless of whatever outputs or outlets in the franchisees a client visits. So there can be two sectors where the companies ensured that there should be standardization. So product standards. So certain production and manufacturing enterprises follow agency standards to ensure that all items in the same category are made or to the same spec across the several locations or companies, or there can be brand names like to maintain the consistent image across the several markets worldwide. Product marketing may be standardized. For example, Coca-Cola company employs global standardization by in the marketing by keeping the product's presentation largely consistent throughout the regions, even though several languages are shown on the items. The corporation uses the same design like Coca-Cola's marketing. Colas also follow the continuous theme, which helps to reinforce the image it represents. So other attributes in company standards are like franchisee, then product requirements, along with the data, brand names, new brands, metrics, and processes. So there are various techniques for standardization. There can be individual standards, there can be national standards, there can be industrial standards, as well as some international standards. So this is about the company standardization. Now, next part is value analysis and cost reduction. So value analysis is most synonyms with reducing cost. It is an orderly and creative process that examines procurement items and calculate in the total cost of acquisition, maintenance, and handling over its lifetime, and checks if it's possible to replace the items with a cost-effective alternative. This process seeks optimal value for an item. The item could be anything: a product, a process, procedure, plan, machine, or a method of working. So this particular figure displayed on the screen illustrates the process. So it is not rare to find a material manager on the outlook for the ways and means to the lower cost. In fact, this technique is said to be most effective in reducing costs, being it pertains to judging whether the material offers value for the money. For the purpose it is required for the value analysis. So value analysis is a structured approach that aims it to do away with the unnecessary expenditure in such a way that in the performance safety guarantee of the system is not affected. So value analysis involves first finding out exact function being performed by the product, then analyzing and weighing all the options or alternate ways in which same functions can be performed, selecting the most economic option. So value analysis is the method of deciding on right quality and design of the product. What provides value to the product? A way to consider the customer view in laying out the products, in analyzing the value that see in the end product. It is important that value is laid out into the products. So there are various steps in value engineering. So value engineering starts with the classification and identification of product, services or systems. So the process involves the value engineering as follows. So there are various steps. So step one, identify each of the function of the product or service and list them are down. Step two, give a weight to the importance of each function, such as the total of the weights comes to 1. Rearrange the function on the basis of their importance. Then identify each of the component in the product or service and list its function. Then fourth step is the function of the component have to be related to the product and the functions of the product. Each component will have to be given a way to show how it contributes to the function of the product or service. There may be some components that have more than one function. Then step 5, identify the cost of each component and convert it to a weight corresponding to the total cost, so that total uh, total of the weight does not exceed 1, just as it was done in step number 2. Step 6, compare the weights of the functions with the weights of the cost of each of the components. And last step, identify the components where the ratio of the function per cost is low. So the component with a low ratio of function per cost are identified for the further examination. The value analysis or value engineering analysis, all the approaches involves taking these identified components and brainstorming with such questions like, does the item have layout features that are not essential? Can two or more components can be clubbed into one? Can it reduce the weight? And are there any non-standard which can be removed further? So these questions you have to ask while doing value engineering and value analysis. So we are moving to the last part, that is learning curve. So what is role of learning curve in materials management? The pace learning as it relates to previous experiences or through time is represented graphically by the learning curve. It illustrates how increased experience leads to the improved learning. The learning curves offers information on experiences, cost, productivity, and efficiency. As a result, it is often referred to as the experience curve, cost curves, productivity curve, and efficiency curve. The idea of learning curve is to illustrate the subject's learn ability or capacity for learning. An individual may concern his relative progress graphically throughout the process and expected difficulty in learning the topic over a certain period of time. The learning curve idea in the business depict the cost and output connection over a set of time period to reflect the repetitive tasks performed by the employer or the employees. So what are the significance of learning curve? So these are the enhancements can result from the learning curves. So the workforce mobility becomes fluid, lesser work being rejected through means less rework. Then instructions to the workers can are given in a shorter amount of time. Tooling and machineries have clearly improved. Management control has significantly improved. Operation outlines are preferable, and due to bigger lots, there is a minimal amount of setup time. There are different stages, but before that we'll just learn a use of learning curve. So use of learning curve can be for establishing an incentive system, then for establishing the capital needs, then outlining an employees work plan to light of the upcoming demands, some determining price based projection expenses, so and organizing the necessary supplies. So here we can use the learning curves, and there are various stages of the learning curve. So first stage, for the first several times at this step, the learning displays 0. Speed up stage. The second stage, commonly referred to as lock stage, is the step up stage. The advancement rate is rapid and rise quickly. Then there is middle stage. You anticipate a shift to happen during this time of the transition. Then there is fixed step or sixth phase. As there is no improvement at this point, the advancement stops. So apart from that, there are various benefits of the learning curves. So learning is necessary for performance development since it cannot occur alone. Businesses include a learning culture to motivate and assist their staff members so as to continue to learn. Keep in mind that learning is what leads to good performance outcomes, and in the end, development of learner and the company he or she belongs to. Learning curve acknowledges the initial availability of little knowledge. It encourages the knowledgeable or experienced worker to help those who are just starting out. As a result, company may avoid wasting time performing certain tasks. Sharing information with the others accelerates the learning curve. The older generation may assist the younger one with the current technologies, and the experienced staff can educate the younger group how to carry out the everyday chores effectively. So, learning curve reduces the labor variation and aids in the establishing the labor norms, helps with product pricing by providing more accurate price estimates, budgeting making advantages to the learning curve, and aids in deliver timetable and work scheduling. The learning curve aids in enhancing the organization's workforce productivity as well. So this is for the second unit. Name of the unit was standardization and materials management.